just like stepping off a curb when you're a child. It's riding a bike. It's the same thing. It's a new learning process.
How do the motivation chairs stand up alongside the standard kind of hospital supply job?
Well, we haven't broken one yet.
They road test the prototype chairs with cement bags instead of people in a lane behind the hospital, conditions similar to the kind they'll have to survive in everyday use. The system is crude but effective. Simon on the tow line and Nigel on the run. They go faster than even a joyrider might try. They want the chairs to stand up to the worst. They're looking for the weak points.
Weld fracture. No problem with the materials at all. The weld is actually good. There's no porosity in it. So we've got to go over to metal welding in this area, not gas. Other than that, everything seems to be holding up well. Now all I want to do is have a look at the frame and see how much that tumble has distorted or not distorted the frame.
One thing that actually, through the time that we've been working, has convinced me that this is quite a good thing to do, is that so many other people have told me how much they hate their jobs, and when I get up in the morning, I look forward to what I do because it's my life. So, and I enjoy it.
At the hospital, David's experience is called on to help not only other wheelchair users, but also doctors and nurses.
I'm a C4-5 quadriplegic.
However much you show somebody that you understand disability, if you're not in a wheelchair, then their perception of that is they don't believe it's real. If Richard and I are doing a presentation and David's not there, the reception is totally different from the way that it is if David is there. But then the actual training has to be from wheelchair rider to wheelchair rider, because that is so much stronger than from myself to a wheelchair rider.
There is a risk of you sitting on something hard or for too long and stopping the circulation. Once the circulation is reduced, the flesh starts to die, and it's very easy to get one. They come very quickly, but they can take months to get rid of. As a disabled person, if I got a pressure sore that made me stay in bed for even more than one day, that would be my worst nightmare.
In a Cheshire home in Jakarta, David meets the wheelchair users who live and work here. They manufacture toys and souvenirs while making new lives for themselves. They also want to know how to manage independently. David is more paralysed but lives more freely.
I live in London in my own house.
Sekarang saya tinggal di London di rumah pribadi saya.
And I work at Motivation's office every day.
Dan saya bekerja di kantor Motivation setiap hari.
And I have, because I can't look after myself, I employ 2 people to help me go to work and get up in the morning and go to bed and so on.
Dan karena saya tidak bisa melakukan.
I try to be very careful not to come in here and say, well, you know, it's all right, look at me, I can survive and I can live a full life. But I've had an incredible amount of opportunities back in the UK that society provided me, going to college and so on, which aren't here, and plus all the medical things, cushion technology, antibiotics, whenever I need them. So when things do go wrong, I can pick myself up pretty quickly. I've got backup with my old spinal unit and the GP system that I can go to. So I need to convey to them that firstly it does happen to a lot of people all over the world, and that life is worth living. And it's difficult, but it is worth living, but very definitely.
They're equipped here not with the mechanical aids they need, but with the spirit and the ideas that may help them rejoin the community outside. You went off in a group with the fellows for a chat. I presume that what they want to know is all the practical things and how you cope with them and whether there's a lesson in it for them. Is that it? Motivation has brought more than chairs to the disabled in Indonesia. Now there's even wheelchair tennis. The national tennis coach gives his services free. In Western society we may be used to the Paralympics, but this is a revolution for the disabled here. It's also a photo opportunity for David.
I was introduced to wheelchair tennis 4 weeks ago. There was a lady called Ellen de Lange that came out from London, a member of the International Wheelchair Tennis Federation. I'm open. I should do more for wheelchair players because they also have the right to enjoy, to have fun like able players have.
After my accident, I packed my cameras under my bed and said, well, I can't pick those up anymore. I'll leave it. And for exactly a year to the day, actually, I left them there. And then decided that really I was still seeing pictures everywhere. I was still imaging things in my mind with no mechanics to actually capture them. And it was then I set about developing ways of using my camera again. In my dreams, I would have dreamt to be a professional photographer when I was about 15. Now I'm not professional, I'm not earning my main living from it, but I'm taking the sort of pictures I want to take. And that's a dream come true.
Fitness is vital to survival in physical and psychological terms, but life expectancy is still less for people in wheelchairs. David is well aware of it.
My life expectancy is probably 5 or so years less than a paraplegic who has full life expectancy. In developing countries, for a paraplegic it's likely to be 2 or 3 years. And quadriplegics, we rarely find that we come across them on our projects who've lived more than a year. That's quite a long time for some of them. I probably wouldn't be around if I lived here, or this had happened in this country.
They're not just able to move around, they now feel able to tackle the social and cultural barriers that usually imprison the paralysed in countries like this. Does the size of what's ahead of you, the number of people in need, ever daunt you or depress you?
Yes, it's a huge task, and the problem is that the group as we are, we don't want to grow too much bigger, but with a rough estimate of 18 million people around the world that need wheelchairs, it's impossible for us to complete the task. It's a shock every day to find out the vastness of the need that we're addressing, because it's not only developing countries, it's England and America as well. There's plenty of people who can't afford decent wheelchairs in Western countries as well as in developing countries.
The normal Brit only has a superficial understanding of what it is to be in a wheelchair. He really does, and he has so many advantages that developing countries, even genuinely developing, fast-moving economies like this, don't have. So I think there is still a large problem of understanding, but I hope that this will begin. I wouldn't like anyone to think that motivation is going to come in and be able to create a large miracle. They will create the beginnings of what later may become a large miracle.
On this tour, David is going on to Cambodia, where they already have a project running successfully. It's a breathtakingly beautiful country and people, torn apart by the genocidal regime of Pol Pot and yearning for peace and safety after the death and devastation of civil war. The survivors made a promise to themselves and the world. How else can you live with the memory of what happened in the killing fields? It's a promise they've been unable to keep. The Khmer Rouge are back. They've returned with a legacy of killing and hate. They've also sown the seeds of death. It might have taken years for Cambodia to recover from Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. Now they're back, it may be decades. The capital, Phnom Penh, has a population once again, But for 4 years only